right. Ezekiel, turn to chapter 3, verse 26 for a second. Because this verse struck Julie. And she was asking about it. And okay, yeah, verse 26 of chapter 3 in Ezekiel says, I will make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth so that you will be silent and unable to rebuke them. Speaking of the people of Israel. Though they are a rebellious house. That sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? The rebellion. Yeah. We need to look at the next verse also. But when I speak to you, I will open your mouth. And you shall say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Whoever will let him listen, listen. Whoever will listen, let him listen. And whoever will refuse, let him refuse, for they are a rebellious house. So I think that idea of the tongue sticking to the roof of the mouth, it's a figurative sense in that what's being said, sometimes he's going to feel like he's preaching up a storm, and he's warning them and exhorting them, and it's not going anywhere. It's just like there's nothing coming out. But in the very next verse, he reassures him that when I speak to you, I will open your mouth and you will say to them. But boy, there's that same concept. It's a rebellious house. Okay? Ezekiel had a rough role as a prophet. Very hard role. So, let's just kind of go with that thought. If you go to chapter 7, see here, we're moving. We're going to chapter 7, first 9 verses, and then we're going to go to chapter 8. I'm telling you, 11 or 12 weeks, we're going to do it. Well, if you want to read something to set you back, look at these first 9 verses in Ezekiel chapter 7. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says to the land of Israel. The end. The end has come upon the four corners of the land. The end is now upon you, and I will unleash my anger against you. I will judge you according to your conduct and repay you for all your detestable practices. I will not look on you with pity or spare you. I will surely repay you for your conducts and the detestable practices among you. Then you will know that I am the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Disaster, an unheard of disaster is coming. The end has come. The end has come. It has roused itself against you. It has come. Doom has come upon you, you who dwell in the land. The time has come. The day is near. There is panic, not joy, upon the mountains. I am about to pour out my wrath on you and spend my anger against you. I will judge you according to your conduct and repay you for all your detestable practices. I will not look on you with pity or spare you. I will repay you in accordance with your conduct and the detestable practices among you. Then you will know that it is I, the Lord, who strikes the blow. Whew. That's pretty strong, isn't it? I don't think it can get a whole lot clearer and stronger than what he's saying there. What themes, what words, phrases jump out to you in that?
Repay.
Huh?
Repay.
God's going to repay.
That's right. You're going to answer.
I will not look upon you with pity.
I will, yeah, more than at least 2, maybe 3 times. I will not look on you with pity.
Or spare you.
Or spare you.
The end has come.
Oh my gosh, 6 times. The word end is in there. The end has come. What is he talking about? The end has come.
Babylon.
His patience is gone.
Babylon's coming.
Okay, the Babylonian army's coming. Janet, you said his patience.
He's lost his patience with them.
He has warned them and warned them and warned them and warned them and warned them.
He says, I will repay your ways.
What's happening, the judgment that's coming, is simply based upon who they are and what they've been doing.
Yeah.
Okay?
I think we need to emphasize that more.
It's pretty humbling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty humbling.
It's not all beautiful roses and gardens. It's, we're going to pay it.
Sounds like America.
There's a lot to be
Yeah.
pondered here.
I read this, that's what I thought.
I want to encourage you also. I hope the first thing you're thinking about is your own life. Like, is there anything that I need to take a little more earnestly when it comes to my relationship with God? Because clearly, He takes sin seriously. I mean, when you think about Christ on the cross for the sins of all of us, that's as serious as it gets, isn't it? Yeah, the end has come. It's kind of like, if you can think of all those years and all the prophets of warning and I mean, even the destruction of the northern kingdom in 722 BC, how much clearer of a warning could that be? Except the Judeans were probably saying, yeah, I told you that was going to happen to them. Those lousy whatever, you know. Instead of looking at their brothers up north and seeing, man, God takes sin seriously. He wiped them out. And then the warnings come from the prophets. And they're still not.
But aren't they defiling the temple at this time too?
As a matter of fact, we're going to go to chapter 8 right now. Chapter 8 is a picture. God shows Ezekiel firsthand in a vision why He's going to bring this to an end. Why the time has come. I think, if you've read chapter 8, I think you'll be a little astounded by what you see there. So let's keep all of that in mind, and let's go to chapter 8.
Joel, it's when you go back through Moses, you go back to where he says, I will give you a choice.
Yeah.
And he puts it all
Yeah.
right out there, clear back
Yeah.
to Moses.
I think it's Deuteronomy 30.
Yes.
When he goes back, Moses, this is right before they go into the promised land, and he says, if you just, God is saying through Moses, if you just walk with me, you're going to find life. Life at its best. Life as it's meant to be. But if you turn away from me, you're going to choose death. Because life apart from me takes you in that direction. Now, in case you think God might be a little too hard on these folks, let's go to chapter 8. Let's start off with the first 4 verses. In the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day. Don't you love that? September 17th, 592 BC. That's pretty cool, isn't it? While I was sitting in my house, and the elders of Judah were sitting before me. Let me just stop right there. Sitting in my house, and the elders of Judah were sitting before me. Does that tell you anything about living conditions in exile for him? For the Hebrew people? It's not. They're given freedom, aren't they? I mean, by and large, they're allowed to build their homes. They're allowed to work and be a community. And, we pointed out a couple of weeks ago, Ezekiel has a home. He's in his house. And some of the elders of Judah were sitting before me. Now, those are the elders that were in exile, not the elders from way down south west of where they were. These were actually folks who were in exile with them. So while I was sitting in my house and the elders of Judah were sitting before me, the hand of the sovereign Lord came upon me there. I looked and I saw a figure like that of a man. From what appeared to be his waist down, he was like fire. And from there up, his appearance was as bright as glowing metal. He stretched out what looked like a hand and took me by the hair of my head. The Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and in visions of God, he took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance to the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provokes to jealousy stood. And there before me was the glory of the God of Israel, as in the vision I had seen in the plain. All right. Don't you love these visions that he's being given? I mean, what a very clear, I mean, you see that in your mind's eye, right? The hand of God, an angel reaching down, picking him up by his hair, taking him to Jerusalem. This is a vision, okay? Lifting him up between heaven and earth, and takes him just outside the north gate of the inner court. The inner court would be where the altar is, okay, for sacrifices. And what does he see? First thing he sees, the idol that provokes to jealousy stood there. Now, do you have any different translation of that in verse 3, the idol that provokes to jealousy?
No, but in verse 2 in my version, it talks about the fire. The
Of
appearance
the-
of fire, and we've just been studying that in Sundays. And that his loin was as if it was on fire.
It's the image of the figure
Mm-hmm.
ought to probably remind us of the original vision, right? When he saw sitting upon the sapphire throne, I mean, he was blazing fire pretty much from head to toe. So no other than the idol that provokes to jealousy. Okay, it's not identified what the idol is.
Perhaps it was a replacement of the goddess Asherah, is what my footnote says originally.
Yeah. And the reason your footnote says it might be Asherah is because two different times Asherah, the pagan goddess Asherah, an idol has been put right in that very spot. Two different times. Manasseh put it there, and then I can't remember who else put it there. And I know King Josiah took it out of there.
King Manasseh and Josiah.
Yeah, Josiah is the one that took it out.
Yeah.
So there's thought that it might be Asherah just simply because that's who's been there before. But another commentator had an interesting thought. And if you turn, keep your finger there, but turn back to Jeremiah chapter 7. Remember, Jeremiah is a contemporary of Ezekiel, and Jeremiah is in Jerusalem at this time. And if you go to chapter 7, verses 16 through 18, Jeremiah 7, verses 16 through 18. And very similar things are happening in this chapter because Jeremiah is pointing out why judgment's coming. So verse 16 of Jeremiah 7, so do not pray for this people nor offer any plea or petition for them. Do not plead for me. With me, for I will not listen to you. God speaking through Jeremiah. Do you not see what they are doing in the towns of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem? The children gather wood, the fathers light the fire, the women knead the dough and make cakes of bread for the Queen of Heaven. They pour out drink offerings to other gods to provoke me to anger. Who is this Queen of Heaven? Because if you go to Jeremiah 44,
Ishtar. I got my footnotes down here.
you're taking those footnotes as the gospel, aren't you?
Yeah.
Chapter 44, go to verse 17. We will certainly do everything we said we would. We will burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and will pour out drink offerings to her, just as we and our fathers, our kings, and our officials did in the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem. At that time we had plenty of food and were well off and suffered no harm. But catch this. If you wonder what people are thinking, tell me you can't see this today. But ever since we stopped burning incense to the Queen of Heaven and pouring out drink offerings to her, we've had nothing and have been perishing by sword and famine. The women added, when we burned incense to the Queen of Heaven and poured out drink offerings to her, did not our husbands know that we were making cakes like her image and pouring out drink offerings to her? Then Jeremiah said to all the people, both men and women who were answering him, did not the Lord remember and think about the incense burned in the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem by you and your fathers, your kings, your officials, and the people of the land? When the Lord could no longer endure your wicked actions and the detestable things you did, your land became an object of cursing and a desolate waste without inhabitants, as it is today. And it goes on. You can read the rest of that chapter. So some think, and I kind of think they've got a pretty good case here, some think, since Jeremiah is in Jerusalem, that whatever this idol that was built could be the Queen of Heaven, which is Ishtar. It really doesn't matter, but I think it's interesting to know how they come to some of the conclusions they come to understand. Because Daniel, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, they're all at the same time frame. Okay? Any thought about that? That's reason number one. I want you to think about this church, this building. And I want you to imagine if you come in the Welcome Center or go into the narthex. Say go into the Welcome Center. And when you walk in the Welcome Center, there's a statue of Buddha.
Oh,
Out the door.
yeah, I'll be right behind you.
Out the door.
Okay. It's a little ire going there, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But no, you see what I'm saying? That's what he's seeing. Okay? Now let's keep it going. Verse 5. Then he said to me, Son of man, look toward the north. So I looked, and in the entrance, north of the gate of the altar, I saw this idol of jealousy. He said to me, Son of man, do you see what they're doing? The utterly detestable things the house of Israel is doing here? Things that will drive me far from my sanctuary. But you will see things that are even more detestable. Then he brought me to the entrance to the court. I looked and I saw a hole in the wall. And he said to me, Son of man, now dig into the wall. This is all still in a vision, okay? So I dug into the wall and saw a doorway there. He said to me, go in and see the wicked and detestable things they're doing here. So I went in and looked, and I saw portrayed all over the walls all kinds of crawling things and detestable animals, all the idols of the house of Israel. In front of them stood 70 elders of the house of Israel. And Jaazaniah, son of Shaphan, was standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, and a fragrant cloud of incense was rising. All right, what's happening right there? This is the second example. What's taking place? What's Ezekiel seeing?
Animal deities.
Yeah, actually carved into the walls, engraved into the walls.
I think he's also seeing the depth of, sometimes we do things behind closed doors and we think nobody knows.
Yeah.
I
And
think
the
that's
elders.
really what, like going to that door.
There's-
You have to dig in.
Yes. There's almost a two-pronged thought here. One is on the walls of the temple court, these engravings of the animals. And basically, the understanding is they are engravings of Egyptian gods that they're bowing down to. And then that hole in the wall is looking through the hole is this idea that even in their own homes, these leaders, these priests, are bowing down and worshiping the idols with the sense that God isn't going to see them. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and read 12 and 13. He said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness, each at the shrine of his own idol? They say, the Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land. Again, he said, you will see them doing things even more detestable. So, okay, he sees the priests bowing down to Egyptian gods.
You might call me extreme, but have you ever watched some of the cartoons that the babies are watching? Animals on the wall. This is what I think of
Okay.
when I see that. I said, we're indoctrinating our children.
When you get outside the walls of the church,
Yeah,
you can find anything.
it is
Anything.
awful.
I mean, it's out there. It really is.
And come across as cartoons.
And a lot of the things that our kids, our young people, from video games to movies, it's. Do you find it interesting that he points out a guy named Jaazaniah, son of Shaphan? Did anybody do any exploring on why would he pick one person out? If you go back, keep your finger there, go back to 2 Kings 22. I'm going to take your notes away. 2 Kings, that's good. That's what you're supposed to be doing.
Tear up my Bible.
You're supposed to be doing that. 2 Kings 22. Well, wait a minute. That's the verse I want. Actually, verse 11. This is during Josiah's reign, which was about 640 to 609. Do you remember when was the first deportation? Here, let's write. I don't write stuff too often, but we're going to write this.
605 maybe?
Yep. Josiah, 640 to 609. He was the reformer. Okay, that's why I picked that name. He was the reformer. First deportation. 605. The second, 597. So everything was good in 609. That's how fast everything went haywire again. Okay? Next line along. So the reforms that happened here didn't go through. They were forced reforms, basically. They didn't change hearts. Now, the reason I point that out is if you look at verse 11 in 2 Kings 22, when the king, Josiah, heard the words of the book of the law for the first time, okay, he tore his robes. He gave these orders to Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, and then others. Go and inquire of the Lord for me and for the people and for all Judah about what is written in this book that has been found. Great is the Lord's anger that burns against us, because our fathers have not obeyed the words of this book. They have not acted in accordance with all that is written there concerning us. If you remember the life of Josiah, he cleaned house when it came to turning people back to God. But by 605, the Babylonians were already taking people away and things were falling apart at the seams. But I want to digress a little bit. Ahikam, son of Shaphan. Shaphan had a family that was loyal to God. His son Ahikam was loyal to God. As a matter of fact, I think I have this written down. If you go to Jeremiah again, Jeremiah 26, 24, you run into Ahikam again. Because you wonder sometimes, why do they pick out one name? Why are they picking on this guy? So in Jeremiah 26:24, furthermore, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, supported Jeremiah. And so Jeremiah was not handed over to the people. He put to death. This guy that was the secretary for King Josiah became a staunch help and supporter to the prophet Jeremiah, and literally kind of spared his life. Was instrumental in sparing his life. So then, you go to Ezekiel in our passage. There are 70 elders of the house of Israel, and right there is Jaazaniah, son of Shaphan, standing among them. Ezekiel's pointing it out. This is the son that turned away. This is the son that, and it was noteworthy, at least to Ezekiel, that this guy turned away from everything. Okay? You've got 70 elders of the house of Israel bowing down to gods that aren't gods.
No wonder the people were so evil and wicked. Their leaders
The leaders were far from God.
Yes.
Right? Go to let's keep going. Verse 14. Then he brought me to the entrance to the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw women sitting there mourning for Tammuz. He said to me, do you see this, son of man? Oh, you will see things that are even more detestable than this. Now, you might be ready to pass on by Tammuz. And I'll tell you what, if you think it's difficult staying up with Hebrew names, when you try to go through some of the Babylonian and Egyptian and Akkadian and start looking at all these gods, Tammuz, I've read Tammuz as everything from the brother of Ishtar to the beloved of Ishtar to the son of Ishtar. So, take your pick. Okay?
Now, are these real live people?
No.
Well, I was gonna say,
No, these are all pagan gods.
That's what I thought, but it says here, husband of Ishtar.
So your footnote takes the route of husband.
Yeah.
I've seen him written as son. I've seen him written as
Well, they can make up anything.
brother. Well, and they're simply going on, what we have historically of who these gods are. He is a Babylonian fertility god. And every time, this is about the time of year they would go into intense worship of Tammuz, because they believed this pagan god died yearly when the crops died. That was the indication. When the crops died, they believed that Tammuz died, and they would go into worship and mourning, and they would be praying. And quite honestly, a lot of it got into some pretty immoral fertility rites. I mean, things you're thinking, come on. But when I think about it, I mean, seriously. If you were going to find a god or goddess to bow down to today, haven't we already chosen immorality sexually? Haven't we already bought into it? And we worship at the idol of sexuality? I don't know how we're not a whole lot different. We just kind of don't call it anything in particular.
Maybe more sophisticated in our descriptors than.
We're more sophisticated in how we describe it and understand it.
Or how we had it.
Or how.
And I think, maybe Eric, maybe the thing is we don't hide it anymore.
No, I don't.
We just are blatant about it. I mean, we just.
So my footnote said he died in the summer and rose in the spring.
Right. Died in the summer and rose in the spring every year.
Yes.
But if you think about it, you're talking about people who depended upon crops,
Yeah, but
right? And they're if they think that praying and bowing to a God that somebody else, see, these are all gods of lands around them. Okay? And there's such they're what here remember what the vision of God was for Israel. The vision was that their relationship with the living God would be the example that would shine light into the darkness of all the nations around them. And that those nations would come to know God. And what happened was, the vast majority of the time, instead of being the shining light in the darkness, they were absorbed by the darkness and embraced it. And in essence, became like everybody else. Do we not? We get that, don't we?
oh, yeah.
I mean, what's the call of the church? To be the light shining in the darkness. And how often is the church simply, maybe say the church is people. How often are God's people simply absorbed into the culture and darkness around us, and instead of being a shining light, we become just like the world around us. We bow down to the same idols as the world around us. What are some of the idols of the world around us?
Fame.
Fame.
Power, money.
Power, money.
Sports figures.
Sports figures. Yep, well, I'll tell you what. I see a lot of adults bowing down to Mountaineers, Thundering Herd, and Steelers and Browns, and see, I'm picking on me too. I mean, we bow down. I once read a little modern parable about if there was an alien that came and came to Earth for the first time, and he happened to come during the Super Bowl. They would think that we were bowing down to bears and lions and all this stuff. No, we have our idols, don't we? But you're right. We think we're sophisticated about it. Okay. Well, it keeps going. Verse 16, he then brought me to the inner court of the house of the Lord. And there at the entrance to the temple, between the portico and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord and their faces toward the east. They were bowing down to the sun in the east. Sun worshipers. You see,
Comet worshipers.
when we are looking at chapter 7, and I have a feeling some of us, when we're reading that, are thinking, God, that's pretty harsh. The end has come.
Maybe we need to flip
I'm not
those.
going to show mercy. It's in chapter 8, he's showing why judgment's coming. I mean, it's as if I mentioned you walk into the welcome center and you see Buddha. You walk into the narthex and you see a place of worship to Muhammad. You walk into the sanctuary and you see, I don't know, take a pick. It's like, it would be like the church just totally turning away from the worship of Christ, turning away from the worship of God, and embracing the worship of everything around us.
And isn't the church doing that?
That's a pretty good question, isn't it? You have any thought that comes to mind that
I mean,
is commentary on that, or?
I just know there's been, is it the Southern Baptist Convention where they embraced a lot of political beliefs over biblical beliefs and caused a whole lot of controversy and several leaders that were very popular have become questionable in what they believe.
Yeah, sadly what we have seen there have been churches for a long time. Boy, this might get me in big trouble. There have been churches for a long time on the left side of the spectrum that have sold out a long time ago for an agenda. And it was a political agenda.
Yes.
Now there are churches on the right side that are selling out. And the last election was a perfect example of it. Selling out for a platform rather than the gospel. Both are committing the same sin. They're walking away from Christ, the gospel, and the scriptures. And that has, the latter movement has caused great loss with our younger generation. Because they saw their Sunday school teachers and their pastors and their elders supporting a platform rather than the gospel. And they were disillusioned by it. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying there. But we've got to be very careful. We're coming up to midterm elections. A couple more years, we're going to be right back around the same old thing again. And nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
Maybe worse. I was gonna say, no, wait a minute, there's been a lot of change.
I'm talking about the church.
Not for the good, yeah.
The church. Nothing. Christians are just as polarized, and the vast majority of it is because of politics, as opposed to coming together and focusing on Christ and His mission. And what is His mission? What is the mission of church?
Love, joy, peace.
The fruit of the Spirit.
Salvation through Jesus Christ.
So you demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit to the world around us, and as we do that, we're the light of the world, and as we do that, people are going to come to know Jesus.
And love
All
each
right.
other as
Now,
Christ
okay, here's your homework assignment for the next 2 years.
Oh dear.
You brought this up. Your homework assignment for the next 2 years is pay attention to the church. Pay attention to Christian people and Christian leaders. Pay attention and ask yourself constantly, are they looking to Christ and the scriptures, or are they looking to an agenda? And you got to be willing to swallow hard if you see somebody I'm telling you right now, and I'm not going to name names. I am extremely disappointed in people that I've looked up to for years. Over the last 4 or 5 years I've seen them. Extremely. I'm not talking about people in the church. I'm talking about leaders that I looked up to.
Mm-hmm.
That have done a tremendous amount of harm, and I don't think they still see it. I think they're blind to it.
I believe we also are trying to welcome in, or the church is welcome people into the church that they know they are living in sin.
Yeah.
But they're also welcoming them in without a repentant heart.
Right. You're right.
Because I want all of those sinners to come.
Right.
But I want them to come with a repentant heart.
Right.
And seek that repentant heart for what
Amen.
God has done for
Right.
us.
Yeah.
Not happy.
Well, yeah. It's
If you don't have a repentant heart, there's no salvation there.
there's kind of yeah.
There's no
You're right.
salvation.
I mean, we have, I probably got, I don't know, 8 Bibles sitting around my house. They didn't have that.
No, they didn't.
I mean, when Josiah discovered it, he didn't even
Like,
know.
where'd that come from? What was that?
Yeah, and I think about Peter, when he saw Jesus in the big catch, he immediately said, "Depart from me, for I'm a sinful man."
Yeah.
I mean, I just think if God showed His presence right now, I don't care how good we were living, we'd be falling on our faces.
Absolutely.
Well, God has showed His presence.
Yeah.
And we've kind of ignored it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got everything written, like you said, you got how
Yeah.
many Bibles in your house? And the world still ignores it.
Mhm.
They had prophets. They didn't have what we have today.
That's right.
And,
We got better.
yeah, we've got,
We have no
We got
excuse.
evidence.
We have no excuse.
Well, as you're pondering all that, let's kind of wrap up this chapter in verse 17. He said to me, speaking to Ezekiel, "Have you seen this, son of man? Is it a trivial matter for the house of Judah to do the detestable things they're doing here? Must they also fill the land with violence and continually provoke me to anger? Look at them putting the branch to their nose. Therefore I will deal with them in anger. I will not look on them with pity or spare them. Although they shout in my ears, I will not listen to them." All right. The next time we get together, we're skipping 9. We're going to go to 10. The glory departs from the temple. By the way, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are all in the same vision. It's all in the same time frame. I don't think I mentioned that. It's all in the same time frame. And also, if you look at the date and you go back, remember when he was spending 390 days on the left, and then he's over on the right for so many days? He's still in that, probably on his right-hand side still, which kind of tells us it wasn't like he had to be there not moving, because things are still happening. And more than likely, what's Ezekiel doing here? He's explaining to the people who are exiles what is happening and what's going to happen. Okay? And it's only, if we're looking at 592, it's only 6 years away. 6 years away before Jerusalem's going to be destroyed. And they've been in exile. Well, he said this was the 6th month, 5th day of the 6th year. So, okay. All right, well, keep reading.
So he wants to skip what chapter?
Well, actually, I want you to go ahead and read it all. But read 9. Go ahead and read 9 through 11, and we're going to talk about 10 next week.
9 through 11.
Okay? So, we're hitting the major highlights. Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for our time. Lord, I pray you help us look within ourselves as we read in Ezekiel. Maybe to look into the areas of our lives that are not under your control, that we insist on keeping for ourselves. That you help us look at ourselves as a church and are we being true to you and your leading? And God, that where there are lessons for our lives, that we would understand them and take them to heart. I thank you for the sometimes brutal honesty of your word. It takes us back at times as we read it. And yet, God, it teaches us so much and shows us truth. Father, I would ask that you keep us ever prayerful about family and friends and loved ones and co-workers and neighbors that are just so insistent on not living for you. Help us to never give up praying for them. That your Spirit would soften their hearts and they would find their way to you. And I pray this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.